Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Rebecca Pickens. I'm a certified book coach and developmental editor, and I'm also host of Self-Editing Essentials, a group coaching program for writers who have finished or almost finished writing their manuscript and are ready to learn the art of self-editing. If you're interested in learning more about the services I provide writers, you can check out my links in the comments section. But today, we are going to talk all about interiority. Have you ever read a story that you recognized had a strong plot, the writing was pretty good, but it just didn't move you? It was something that it was a story you knew you would forget pretty quickly. Oftentimes, in instances like this, it's because interiority is missing. Interiority is your character's internal life put out onto the page. So this will include your character's private thoughts, their emotions, the questions they're asking about their lives, judgments they're making about themselves, about the other people that they know, and all of the contradictions that swirl inside the head of compelling characters. Interiority is not generic thought like, I want to go home, or generic emotions like, he was angry. In the novel Never Let Me Go, we meet Kathy, the story's protagonist and narrator. This is an example of how Ishiguro presents this character's interiority. It's like walking past a mirror you've walked past every day of your life, and suddenly it shows you something else, something troubling and strange. Here we get inside Kathy's deepest thoughts, and they are expressed in a way that really hook us as readers and make us feel interested and engaged with what this character's internal struggles are. It is not a superficial, I felt surprised, I was confused, or a telling through action. It's really getting into the heart of this character's thinking. So, why it matters. Interiority in writing provides the reader with a full emotional, immersive experience. Readers are very rarely moved by what happens. They're moved by how it is experienced. So I want you to think about fairy tales that you grew up hearing. We all know the same stories: Cinderella, Goldilocks, Little Red Riding Hood. And chances are you've heard these stories over and over and over again. And yet, depending on who told the story and depending on how they told it, that story probably landed for you differently. And that's why we have so many fairy tale retellings, because these are opportunities that storytellers take to give us new twists on old stories. And the way they often do that is by providing some interiority. That's because they know that's great storytelling, getting inside that character's head, knowing what they were afraid of, knowing what their hopes and dreams were. Interiority provides character depth. It shows nuance, fear that can be layered over bravado, desire mixed with shame, love tangled with resentment. It's this complexity of emotion that gives a character its depth and makes them more interesting. Interiority is also a very good way to show your story's themes in action. The way that a character wrestles internally is where the story's meaning really gets spotlighted and where the author's intent can also be clarified. And when we think of a story's voice or a character's voice, this transcends mere style. We often think of voice as your story's style, but it's also your story's personality. And interiority is the engine that really drives that your story's voice and helps us experience it in the way that you want us to. Without interiority, your readers are observing a story, but with interiority, they inhabit it. They become part of that character's life. They become part of that character's understanding and take on the world. Interiority, as a result, builds the reader's empathy and investment in the story you're telling. And it's the reason why some characters stay in our hearts for years and years and years, right? Think about the stories with the characters that have stuck with you. Chances are, if you go back and give them a reread, they will be excellent mentor texts to show how to achieve optimal interiority in your writing. So there are a number of different ways to thread interiority throughout your story. I've listed three of the most common ways here. The first is to narrate immediate reactions. She smiled at him. He looked away, unsure if she meant it, or if she was just being polite. He hated how much that mattered. So, on the surface, if we just look at that first sentence and we strip away all the interiority that's shown here, we just simply have a woman smiling at someone. And on the surface, that's not interesting at all. But now, as we add this interiority, we see a man who's feeling very unsure, who's feeling a little unsteady in this exchange, and suddenly the stakes are higher. There's much more at play here than originally meets the eye. So we can also use interiority for an interpretation of events. Let's look at this example. Her son wasn't himself at dinner that night, and she couldn't stop replaying the conversation she'd overheard of him talking to Laura. Should she have intervened? And if she had, would things be different now? This is very interesting because on the surface, it's of course not ideal when your son shows up to the table not being themselves. But without this extra level of interiority provided by mom, who's reflecting on a conversation she heard earlier, there's more of a mystery, but there is not the tension and the high stakes being alluded to here. When we see mom reflecting on this conversation with Laura, we realize, oh, this situation is doubly troubling, not only because it reflects a problem with the son, but it suggests that mom is going to feel more conflict because perhaps she could have intervened somehow. So we're doing a lot here. We're providing some subtext and we're raising the stakes and tension. Finally, conflicting desires. Would it matter if she left? She wanted to drive away more than she had ever wanted anything. And yet she wanted to stay. There was so much more to do and see there. Conflicting desires are a great way to really add interest to your story, to compound any kind of tension, and to give your character obstacles that they need to eventually overcome, which of course gives your story momentum and narrative drive. So, using interiority to establish what those conflicts are is very impactful. So there are a few things to be on the lookout for when you start to use interiority in your story. First of all, is too little. Pure action without interiority does not give your readers something to hold on to and to connect with. This is where we get stories that on the page, like in theory, seem like they should be really captivating and full of interest, but we usually forget pretty quickly after because we haven't been given a chance to become intimate with that character because we haven't been privy to their interiority. The flip side of that is too much interiority is such a drag to read as well. Pages and pages of rumination with no context, no attention to pacing or structure can be a real chore to read. So it is a delicate balancing act. And interiority that's really abstract. She felt sad, for example, tells us almost nothing. There's no nuance here, and this doesn't add any level of, it doesn't add any texture or new layers of complexity. So be sure that you are really driving home the specificity of the interiority that you are trying to express. Using embodied emotion, specificity, and sensory details will help you anchor your character's internal life inside the physical world. Interiority is generally about conflict. The most powerful interiority is often conflicted, complex, and full of contradictions, just like human beings, right? I wanted to say yes, but I was afraid yes would mean I'd lose myself again. Here we see a character being pulled in two different directions. Presumably, what happens next is going to be a consequence of this complicated feeling this character is navigating. When a character wants two things at once or doesn't even know what they want, it really pulls the reader in. We want to find out what's going to happen. What's going to be the consequence of all this confusion? Interiority is an excellent way of ramping up your reader's interest, hooking them, and making them stay engaged. You've got a bunch of tools in your toolbox to use when you are considering how to incorporate interiority into your story. Most important is ask, what is your character's inner question right now? In every scene, your protagonist should be asking something. Can I trust this person? Am I doing the right thing? What if I fail again? And you can use these questions as the foundation for the interiority you decide to express. Good interiority often is a look at the mask versus the truth, what your character is saying to others versus what they really think. And so sometimes dialogue followed by interiority, followed by more dialogue, can be really fascinating. What is your character saying versus what are they thinking? And these emotions that inspire interiority live in the body. So showing your character's physical response to all of this stuff that's going on in their heads can really make it feel real, and it can give your reader the experience of what it is to be having this kind of interiority, to be having these interior thoughts in this moment. So examples include showing your character's jaw tightening, palms sweating, sharpness of a childhood memory that arrives out of all of a sudden, uninvited, and how that makes a character feel physically. These are examples of ways to show the way the emotion is residing in your character's physical being. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please hit like and do subscribe to this channel. Every Tuesday, I drop new videos about writing, editing, publishing, and I'm always here to answer your questions as well. In the meantime, happy writing.